The sun had barely risen when the wagon wheels groaned against the dry earth. Emma Granger gripped the reins with tired hands, her knuckles white from the cold. She wasn't far from Fort Rainier, at least. That's what the last trail marker sighed. A few more miles and she'd be safe. Alone, widowed, and carrying only what her husband left her after dying of fever on the trail. She had no one to count on but herself. She should have known better than to travel these parts alone. Arrows came first. One shattered the wooden post beside her head. Another pierced the mule's flank, sending the animal rearing and toppling the wagon. Emma hit the ground hard, dust filling her lungs as she scrambled to her knees. Before she could run, shadows surrounded her, Apache warriors on horseback, their paint-streaked faces unreadable, their eyes cold. Emma didn't scream. She knew better. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears, but she stayed still, trying to appear smaller than she felt. One of them barked a command. Another dismounted and grabbed her by the arm, dragging her through the dust like a rag doll. She kicked, she fought, she bit, but she was no match. The world spun, and then suddenly, she was thrown at the feet of the largest man she'd ever seen. He stood taller than any of the others, his long black hair tied with leather cord, a tomahawk at his hip and a carved blade in his hand. His chest was bare, muscles coiled with tension, scars etched like stories across his skin. His gaze locked onto hers deep, unreadable eyes like the darkest night. This was their leader. Emma didn't beg not right away. She just stared at him, breath coming in short gasps, unsure whether to scream or spit in his face. But something in his stance stopped her. He wasn't acting in blind rage. He studied her as if calculating her worth, not just as a prisoner, but as something else entirely. He stepped forward slowly, towering over her, then crouched. He raised the blade to her throat, letting the cold edge rest just under her chin. One small motion and it would all be over. Her voice shook, but it came. "Please, don't kill me." He didn't move. She swallowed and added, "Make me your woman instead." A hush fell over the circle of warriors. The man's eyes narrowed, not in confusion, but in something closer to conflict. His blade remained at her neck, but his hand tightened on the hilt. Emma felt tears rise, but she forced them back. "I'll bear you strong children. I'm not useless. I can work. Just don't end me here." She had no idea why she said it. She wasn't thinking. Her instinct screamed, and somehow her mouth obeyed the only part of her that wanted to live. The blade didn't move. His jaw flexed once, then again. He looked over her shoulder at his men, who were silent, watching. Seconds passed 1, 2, 3. Then he stood, pulling the knife away, and sheathed it without a word. Emma exhaled shakily. Her hands trembled in her lap. But she wasn't dead. He gestured for two of the warriors to lift her. They grabbed her arms not cruelly, but with no gentleness either, and pulled her to her feet. As they began to lead her away from the broken wagon, she looked back once. The warrior, their leader, stood in place, watching her, the weight of something unspoken in his stare. His expression was still hard, but the blade had been lowered, sheathed. Won a moment of mercy. What she didn't know was that in the Apache language, the name Dakota meant friend to everyone. And though his tribe knew him as a fierce warrior, a defender of blood and land, he had once been a husband himself, a man who lost a wife and unborn child to settlers who wore uniforms and waved flags. Mercy wasn't his way. Not anymore. So why had he spared her? That question would haunt them both, but for now, Emma Granger rode through the canyon tide and flanked by warriors, a prisoner still yet breathing. Somewhere deep in her gut, she knew she hadn't just bought her life. She had bartered it for something much more dangerous. Love, hatred, power, or maybe all three. And Dakota, his blade, now silent, was already wondering whether the woman, who begged for his mercy, might just burn down every wall he'd built around his heart. The journey to the Apache camp was long and brutal. Emma's hands were bound, her ankles sore from walking across rocky hillsides. Dust caked her skin and her lips cracked from thirst. But she didn't complain. Not once. She had no idea where they were taking her, only that the silent, watchful men flanking her wouldn't hesitate to kill her if she stepped out of line. One of them looked back every so often, a scar slicing down his jaw like a permanent sneer. His eyes were full of suspicion, but it was the leader Dakota who unnerved her most. He rode ahead, never looking back, but always aware of her. Like a predator who didn't need to stare to know exactly where his prey was. When they finally reached the camp, hidden in a steep valley surrounded by pine and stone, the women and children came out to see the newcomer. They stared at her with a mix of fear, disgust, and curiosity. A white woman in their land, among their warriors, it wasn't right, and everyone knew it. Emma was shoved toward a tent at the edge of camp. She nearly stumbled into a pile of firewood before a woman older, gray-haired, and strong-backed caught her arm. "Sit," the woman said, her English heavily accented but clear. Emma dropped to her knees, aching, trembling. The old woman didn't offer comfort. She only examined her like she was inspecting livestock. After a long moment, she said, "You spoke to Dakota, offered him something." Emma didn't answer. "You said you'd be his woman. Is that what you truly want?" Emma's voice cracked. "I want to live." The woman didn't blink. "Then you must earn your place." And with that, the testing began. The next day, Emma was made to carry water from the river in heavy clay jugs. She washed animal hides until her arms gave out. She cooked over open fires, her pale skin blistering in the heat, while the Apache women watched from a distance, some sneering, others whispering in hushed tones. No one helped her, no one trusted her. She didn't belong, not yet. And then there was Nita, young, striking, and fiercely proud. Nita had been raised in the tribe and once believed herself destined to become Dakota's wife. She carried herself like a warrior's woman, head high, jaw tight, eyes full of fire. When she saw Emma, her lip curled. "She is weak," Nita said one evening, loudly enough for everyone to hear. "She offers her body, and that is all. She has no heart for our life," Dakota heard. He was seated across the fire, polishing his knife, but he didn't look up. He let the words hang in the air. Emma heard them too. She didn't reply. She kept washing the dishes in silence, her back aching, her fingertips raw. But inside, a spark caught flame. She wasn't going to let this woman be right. Later that night, she was given a small blanket and a pile of straw to sleep on near the outer edge of the camp. No tent, no fire. Just the stars and the cold. She curled up, her arms wrapped around herself. Somewhere beyond the dark trees, wolves howled. A shadow approached. She sat up quickly, heart hammering. It was Dakota. He didn't speak at first. Just stood there, a tall silhouette with eyes like flint. Finally, he said, "You are not dead." She blinked. "Should I be?" He shrugged. "A white woman walking into a fire expects not to burn?" "I'm not here to take anything from you," she said. "I only wanted to live." Dakota stepped closer, and for the first time, there was something in his gaze beyond cold calculation. It wasn't warmth, but curiosity. "You said you'd be mine," he said slowly. "Yet I have not touched you. I've not claimed you. Why do you still stay?" Emma sat up straighter. "Because if I run, I die. And if I stay, maybe I change something." Dakota tilted his head. "Change what?" "I don't know," she admitted, then looked away. "Maybe myself." For a brief moment, silence stretched between them. Then Dakota turned, his voice almost too low to hear. "Words are wind. We'll see if you last." And with that, he walked away, disappearing into the shadows. Emma lay back down and stared at the stars. She was alive. For now, but every second in that camp was a gamble, and whether Dakota spared her out of curiosity, desire, or strategy, she hadn't truly earned her place yet. That part was still coming. The days bled together sunrise to sunset, work to exhaustion. The Apache camp had no room for idleness, and Emma Granger quickly realized no one would help her, teach her, or give her a second chance if she failed. If she dropped a jug of water, no one handed her another. If she burned the food, the children went hungry. And if she faltered even once while gathering herbs or carrying firewood, someone, usually Nita, made sure it was known. Still, Emma did not crumble. She rose each morning. Before the others, she tied her blistered feet with torn cloth, chopped kindling with a dull blade, and hauled water from the stream until her arms screamed. The other women watched her from a distance, some with pity, most with suspicion. But one pair of eyes watched her differently. Tako Dea. He said little. He never touched her, never gave her commands or praise. But she saw him, always at the edge of her vision, carving wood, speaking with elders, or returning from a hunt, and she felt it. He was watching to see if her words had been real. Was she just a desperate woman who bartered her body for survival? Or could she endure the fire? One afternoon, Emma was tending a row of hides stretched out to dry when she heard soft coughing. She turned to find a young boy, no older than 6, huddled in the shade near the elder's tent. His cheeks were flushed and his breathing shallow. Emma hesitated. She'd been warned not to approach the children without permission. But something about the boy's labored wheezing pulled at her deeper instincts, the same instincts that once stirred when her younger brother fell ill during a snowstorm back home. She stepped forward slowly. "Hey there." The boy flinched but didn't run. Emma knelt beside him, pressing a hand to his forehead. "Fever. Bad one." She looked around. No adults nearby. No medicine. Emma tore a strip of cloth from her already frayed skirt, soaked it in the nearby water barrel, and gently wiped the sweat from his brow. "You'll be all right," she whispered. "Just hold on." She didn't see the elder woman watching from the shadows of the nearby tent, the same one who had questioned her when she first arrived. Nor did she see Dakota pause mid-step across the camp, brow furrowing as he observed the scene. Emma only saw the child. That night, as fires crackled across the camp, the elder woman approached. She held something wrapped in deerskin and wordlessly handed it to Emma. Inside was a mixture of dried herbs and bark natural fever remedies. Emma looked up, confused. "What is this?" The woman answered. "You helped my grandson. Now help him right." Emma blinked. For the first time, someone had seen her not as a prisoner, but as a person. She didn't sleep that night. She stayed with the boy, brewing teas, placing cool stones under his arms, whispering stories under her breath. By dawn, the worst of the fever had broken, and the next morning, the boy's mother pressed a small woven bracelet into Emma's hand without a word. The bracelet meant nothing to the others, but everything to Emma. It meant she was beginning to be seen. Nita, however, saw something else, a threat. She cornered Emma near the drying racks, voice sharp. "You think healing one child makes you one of us? You don't belong here." Emma didn't flinch. "I'm not trying to be one of you. I'm just doing what needs to be done," Nita sneered. "You're nothing but a pawn. Dakota will never make you his woman. You're a moment of mercy, a curiosity." Emma's gaze didn't waver. "Then why are you so afraid of me?" That stopped Nita, just for a heartbeat, but a heartbeat was enough. That evening, Dakota approached her. She had just finished scrubbing out a pot by the river when she heard his boots on the stone. He crouched beside her without a word. She glanced up, heart pounding. "The boy lives?" he said. "Yes," Emma answered quietly. "Why did you help him?" She shrugged. "Because he needed it. Because he reminded me of my brother. Because someone should." Dakota didn't smile, but something in his expression softened. "Most in your position would have looked away." "I'm not most." "No," he agreed, standing. "You are not." As he walked away, Emma felt a strange heat in her chest. Not pride exactly, but something close. She hadn't been claimed, protected, or saved. She had earned a sliver of ground. With her own hands, and in a camp full of strangers, that sliver was worth everything. The morning came bitterly cold, with a frost that curled the edges of the drying hides and coated the cooking pots in silver. Emma's fingers were red and numb as she stirred the breakfast porridge over the open flame. She didn't complain. She had long learned that words meant little in this camp. What mattered were actions, quiet, steady, tireless, and they hadn't gone unnoticed. Children no longer flinched when she passed. One woman even handed her a bundle of roots and nodded just once in thanks. It wasn't friendship. Not yet. But it was something. What Emma didn't realize was that every small gesture of acceptance she earned came at a cost. And someone else was keeping tally. Nita single quotes, as resentment had grown into a quiet storm. She had waited for years to be seen. By Dakota, not just as a fellow warrior, not just as a hunter's daughter, but as his rightful match. She had survived every drought, stood beside him in war councils, nursed his wounds when he returned from raids. Yet he never touched her, never looked at her the way he did now with the white woman. It made her blood boil. And so, Nita decided to act. It began subtly. The water Emma hauled from the river suddenly tasted strange, sour. Then a basket of roots she'd peeled was tossed out and declared tainted. One morning she awoke to find her blanket missing and her boots soaked. She said nothing. She knew better than to whine. But the message was clear. You don't belong here. Emma worked harder, ignoring the stares, pushing through the cold and pain. But inside she was beginning to fray. Then one afternoon, something worse happened. She had been given the task of preparing a stew for the evening meal. It was a test, one she knew carried weight. The elder woman had watched her gather the ingredients carefully, even handed her rare dried beans and wild herbs. It was going well, until the pot began to boil over. A strange bitterness filled the air. Emma tasted it, her face twisting. The stew had turned foul, bitter like spoiled meat. Panic rose in her throat. She checked everything: roots, beans, water jug. And that's when she noticed it. The water was cloudy, laced with something oily and pungent. Sabotage. She turned, scanning the faces around the fire. Nita stood nearby, arms crossed, a slight smirk on her lips. Emma met her gaze. You poisoned the pot, Nita shrugged. Then maybe you should be more careful. The elder woman stepped forward, her face hard. Who gave you this water? I fetched it myself, Emma said, her voice low. But someone replaced the jug. Dakota had been watching from the edge of camp. At the sound of raised voices, he stepped into the circle. What happened? He asked. Emma looked him in the eye. The stew was ruined. Someone tampered with it. Dakota turned his gaze to Nita, who stared back defiantly. She says it was me, Nita said, raising her chin. The outsider who doesn't even know our ways now points fingers. Emma's hands curled into fists. I've done everything asked of me. I've bled for your people. I helped your children. Why are you so afraid of me? Silence fell. Dakota stepped forward slowly. His eyes lingered on the ruined stew, then on Nita's proud, rigid posture. I've known you many years, Nita, he said, and I know your strengths, but fear is not among them. Her expression flickered. Dakota turned to the elder. Give her another task, something harder. If she's to stay, let her prove it again. Emma nodded, jaw set. I will. Nita scoffed and stormed off, her braids swinging behind her like a whip, but the seed had been planted. Dakota hadn't dismissed Emma, he had defended her in front of everyone. That night, Emma was sent into the high woods to collect thorn ruta, rare plant used in medicine but hard to find and harder to dig out. It was a test of endurance and navigation, and more than one woman had failed it, but Emma didn't complain. She wrapped herself in her thin blanket, grabbed a dull digging knife, and headed into the trees alone. Each step was painful, her legs aching, her hands numb. Coyotes howled in the distance. An owl watched from a gnarled branch. She kept going for hours. When she returned, just before sunrise, her clothes torn, her knees scraped, but the pouch full of thorn roots swinging from her waist, Dakota stood waiting near the fire. You didn't. Run, he said. Emma met his gaze. I said I'd prove myself. A long silence stretched between them. Then Dakota nodded once. And you have. The next few days brought no peace, but they brought space. Space from the whispers. From Nita. Even from the constant stares. Emma was left to her tasks in relative quiet. A few women now greeted her with cautious nods. The elder woman who had once eyed her like a wild dog even allowed her to help crush herbs for salves. The boy she had cared for came by each day, offering small things. A flower, a painted feather, a half-eaten apple. He didn't speak much, but his smile meant more than any words. Still, there was one man Emma couldn't stop thinking about, and he was the one who said the least tako day. She single quotes D seen him at night, sitting alone on a rocky ridge above the camp. Not with his warriors, not at the council fire. Just him, watching the stars as if waiting for something or someone that would never return. It wasn't until the third night that Emma found the courage to approach him. The firelight from the camp flickered faintly behind her as she climbed the slope. The moon was full, casting silver over the jagged earth. Dakota sat on a large flat stone, his silhouette rigid. He heard her coming but didn't turn. Emma stopped a few feet away. I didn't mean to intrude. You didn't, he said quietly. She hesitated, then sat beside him far enough to be respectful, close enough to feel the cold wind he wasn't reacting to at all. I couldn't sleep, she admitted. Dakota nodded but said nothing. She looked out over the valley, her voice soft. You come up here every night, his jaw flexed. It's the only place that still feels like mine. Emma waited. The silence between them didn't feel heavy. It felt ancient, like stone that had weathered too many storms. Finally, she asked, Were you always like this? Hard, quiet, alone? His breath came out slowly. No. She turned to him, surprised. Then what changed? Dakota's eyes were locked on the horizon. His voice, when it came, was low and raw. 5 winters ago, I had a wife. Her name was Avanasa. It means my home. She was pregnant, our first child. We lived in peace then, before the soldiers burned our village. They came in the night, claimed it was a mistake, that they were chasing raiders, but they shot her, and the baby inside her. Emma swallowed hard, her chest tightening. I buried her under that cedar tree. He pointed toward a distant shape just beyond the ridge. Since then, I've made war. On their kind, on their lies, on mercy. Emma looked down at her hands. And then you found me. He glanced at her now, the shadows softening around his face. You begged to live. But you didn't just cry or scream. You offered something raw, real. It confused me. She smiled faintly. It confused me too. Dakota studied her for a long moment. I thought if I let you live, I'd regret it. And do you? His eyes darkened. Not yet. They sat in silence again, the air thick with something unspoken. Then Emma spoke, carefully. "You think we're so different," she said. "You see me as one of them, those soldiers, those settlers. But I lost everything too. My husband died of fever, weeks from any doctor. We were trying to build a new life, but the land took him before the dream could even take root. I buried him with my own hands." She looked away, blinking back the sudden sting behind her eyes. "You don't have a monopoly on grief." Dakota turned his head slightly. "No, but I do carry it like a blade." They sat there, two people, carved by loss, breathing the same cold air, sharing the same jagged silence. Finally, Dakota stood. "Come, the night's too long to waste on ghosts." Emma followed, and as they walked side by side back toward the camp, she didn't feel like a prisoner anymore. She felt like someone who had cracked open the shell around a wounded man. Just. A little Dot and Dakota, for the first time in 5 winters, let someone walk beside him without fear. By morning, the warmth of the ridge was gone, replaced by firewood duty, cold air, and quiet glares. Emma returned to her routine like nothing had happened the night before. But something had. Dakota had shared his pain, trusted her with it. Not as a prisoner, not as a bargaining tool, but as a woman. One who had also known loss. One who had stayed, and the tribe was beginning to notice. Some of the women greeted her now with curt nods. Others even offered her leftover scraps of hide to wrap her blistered feet. The old woman, Dakota's aunt, Emma now learned, handed her a small pouch of herbs and murmured, "For strength." But not everyone was pleased by Emma's growing acceptance. Least of all, Nita. The fire trial had once been reserved for young warriors, a brutal test of endurance, obedience, and spiritual strength. But over time, it had become something else, something symbolic. If an outsider wished to become part of the people, they had to walk through fire first. Literally and metaphorically, the trial was not often invoked, but now it was. The decision came during a council gathering. The air was tense, the men seated in a circle of stone while the women watched from the edges. Emma was called forward by Dakota himself. She stepped into the center slowly, nerves twisting like rope in her belly. Dakota's voice was steady. "You have survived in this camp. You have worked. You have helped our sick. You have spoken with respect. But not all believe that is enough." Emma's eyes flicked to Nita, who stood with arms folded, lips pursed in satisfaction. Dakota continued. "To be accepted by all, you must pass the trial of fire. It is not punishment. It is not cruelty. It is tradition." Emma nodded. "What must I do?" A few gasps echoed. Some expected begging, refusal, even fear, but not that. The trial began. At dawn. Emma was given a small water skin, a bundle of sticks, a knife, and a strip of dried meat. She was led to the base of a steep canyon that wound through thorned brush and slick stone walls. Task: gather enough firewood from the mountain's upper ridge alone and return before sundown to light the sacred fire at the camp center. Were no trails, no signs, and no help. If she failed, if she returned empty-handed, late, or injured, she would never be considered one of them. The climb was brutal. The terrain was sharp, unforgiving, and steep. Every step tested her legs. Every thorn scraped her skin. Every breath burned her lungs. Emma slipped more than once. Fell twice. Her arms were scratched bloody, and her hands shook from fatigue. At one point, she screamed out loud, not in fear, but in rage. "Damn it, I said I'd do this." No one heard, but she kept going. By midday, she reached the ridge. Her clothes were torn, her knees scraped, and her feet nearly numb. But she began gathering dry branches from wind-stripped trees, using her knife to cut away thorns and vines. The pile was heavy. Too heavy. So she bound it with rawhide and tied it across her back. carrying it like a burden and a promise. The sun began its descent. She had hours. No dash less. The descent was worse. Her footing slipped twice. She rolled once down a gravel slope and lay winded for a moment, staring at the sky. But something inside her whispered, "Get up." She did. Back at the camp, the tribe had gathered around the cold fire pit. The sun touched the edge of the hills. Whispers rose. "She won't come. She wasn't meant to. She's too soft," Nita smirked. She failed. But Dakota stood silent, arms crossed, eyes on the canyon mouth. And then a silhouette appeared. Emma. Bleeding, limping, coated in dirt and dust, but dragging the bundle behind her. Some gasped. She didn't speak. She simply stepped forward, dropped the wood at the pit, and with trembling fingers struck the firestone again and again until smoke appeared. Then flame. The fire roared to life. The circle fell silent. Dakota stepped forward. His voice was low, firm. "You did not ask for help. You did not cry. You endured." He looked to the council, then to his people. Let it be known she passed. That night the fire burned higher than it had in many moons, and though Emma sat apart, drinking water with shaking hands, something shifted in the air. She was no longer just the woman who had begged to live. She was the woman who had fought to stay. And Dakota, watching her from across the flames, knew he had underestimated her strength. He wasn't sure if he admired her or feared what she might become. The fire trial changed everything. Not with loud celebration or applause, but in the quiet, subtle way that respect blooms in a place where no one gives it freely. Women began to offer Emma tools, not just tasks. One braided her hair before chores. The children no longer stared from a distance. They came closer, giggling, curious. The men, though still watchful, no longer looked at her like a threat. But Dakota, he remained silent, unchanged, unreadable. He hadn't spoken to her since the Bayo trial. He hadn't even looked her way during the council that followed. She wondered if he was avoiding her or wrestling with something even he couldn't name. So when she saw him walk toward the ridge again, just after sundown, Emma made a decision. She followed. The stars were already out, splashed in silver across a vast black sky. The land below looked smaller from up high, peaceful even, with the campfires flickering like candles in the dark. Dakota sat on the same stone as before, arms resting on his knees, his hair loose and wild in the wind. He didn't turn when she approached, but he didn't tell her to leave either. She sat beside him in silence for a long while. The only sound was the wind through the pines and the far-off howl of a wolf. Then Emma spoke, her voice low. "You've been avoiding me." Dakota's eyes stayed on the horizon. "I've been thinking." "About what?" "You." Emma's throat tightened. "Why?" He turned to her slowly, and for the first time she saw it conflict, deep and dangerous. His voice came out gravel thick. "Because I never expected you to stay alive, much less become something the tribe might follow." "I didn't come here to be followed," she said. "I came here to survive." "And now?" Emma hesitated. "Now, I don't know. But I don't want to leave." Dakota studied her, eyes sharp but not cruel. "You proved your body could endure. But what about your heart?" She met his gaze. "I've lost too much to carry a fragile heart." That made him pause. She looked away. Voice softer. "I didn't just lose a husband. I lost a life, a home. Everything I thought I was going to be." Dakota exhaled through his nose. "Then we are the same." "No," she said, "you still lead. You still protect. You still have people. And yet," he murmured, "I sit here each night alone." Silence fell again, but this one was different, not empty. Not cold. Electric. Emma felt the tension rising between them like the air before lightning. Her skin prickled. Her heartbeat kicked up a notch. Dakota leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. The night my wife died, I promised I'd never take another. I thought it was a vow of strength. He turned to her again, and something in his expression cracked open. But when I look at you, I don't feel strong. I feel unsteady. Emma's breath caught. Then maybe you should break that vow. Dakota didn't answer with words. He reached up slowly, brushing a loose strand of hair from her cheek. His hand lingered there, rough palm against her skin. Everything about you is fire, he whispered. And I've lived too long in the cold. Emma leaned into his touch, just slightly, then let it burn. He pulled her into a kiss, slow, searching, cautious. It wasn't a warrior's kiss. It was a man's, a broken man trying to trust. Again, she didn't resist. When he pulled away, his voice was husky. If I take you into my arms, I can't let you go. You don't have to, she said. He stood, offering his hand. Come. And she did. That night, under a blanket of stars and within the privacy of his tent, walls came down. Pain was shared. Scars were touched, not with pity, but with reverence. There were no promises, no labels. Just truth, and something else neither. Of them dared say aloud, hope, by morning, nothing was spoken between them. But as Emma emerged from Dakota's tent, the tribe noticed. Nita's glare burned. The elder woman gave a quiet nod, and Dakota. He stood before his people and simply said, She is no longer a guest in this camp. It wasn't a proposal, it was a declaration. Emma belonged to them and to him. The days after Dakota's public declaration were strange, softer in some ways, sharper in others. Emma now slept inside his tent, beside the fire, with a blanket she hadn't had to beg for. She still woke before dawn, still worked hard, still earned her place one step at a time, but now no one questioned if she belonged, except Nita. She had fallen silent, her stares colder, more calculating. She hadn't spoken to Emma since that morning, not a word. That silence made Emma more nervous than the insults ever had. Dakota seemed unconcerned. She's prideful, he said one night, running a hand through Emma's hair. But she will not cross a line she cannot return from. Emma wasn't so sure. The raid came on the 5th night after the trial. The sun had long set, and the children were tucked into their hides. Fires were low, and the warriors not on patrol had settled in to sleep. Emma was helping the elder prepare a tonic when a low whistle cut the still air. Then dash shouts. Crashing hooves. War cries. The sound of steel slicing air. Emma froze, but the elder didn't. Get the children. Hide them. Panic erupted. Raiders from a rival Apache band poured into the camp. Shadows darted between tents, setting fire to goods, grabbing what they could, striking down anyone who stood in their way. Emma didn't run. She sprinted to the nearest cluster of huts, scooping up a small girl and calling to the others. Come. Stay low, follow me. She ducked into the storage shelter and shoved the children behind crates of dried corn and fur. Don't move. Don't make a sound. The children were crying. One boy clung to her skirt. Another trembled violently. Emma held her breath, praying they wouldn't be found. Then a scream tore through the night. Close. Nita. Emma peeked out the door, heart pounding. Nita was cornered by 2 raiders near the edge of the fire pit. She had a blade in her hand, but it was small and her arm was bleeding badly. Without thinking, Emma ran. She grabbed a burning log from a fallen fire and swung it like a weapon. Flames flared, and the nearest raider turned just in time for the log to catch his face. He screamed. Nita lunged, stabbing the second in the thigh. Together, they drove the raiders back just long enough for Dakota to arrive. He moved like a storm unleashed. His tomahawk struck clean and fast, and within seconds, Both attackers were down. Emma stood panting, face streaked with ash, the log still smoldering in her hand. Dakota's eyes found hers, and for the first time since she met him, they were wide with something like fear. You could have been killed. I had to protect them, she said, nodding toward the shelter. And her. He glanced at Nita, who had collapsed to her knees, blood running down her arm. Dakota didn't say anything. He simply wrapped an arm around Emma and pulled her close. You're not just one of us, he whispered into her hair. You are ours. By dawn, the raiders had fled, driven off by Dakota's warriors. 3 men had died defending the camp. 2 others were wounded, but most had survived thanks to quick action and resistance. Thanks to Emma. The people gathered at the fire pit in silence. Nita, her arm now bound in herbs and leather, stepped forward. Her face was pale, her voice quiet. She saved my life, she said, nodding toward Emma. I did not ask her to. I did not deserve it, but she did. The crowd murmured. Then Nita looked directly at Emma. You are stronger than I thought, and braver. Emma blinked, unsure what to say. But it didn't matter because Dakota rose beside her, holding her hand for all to see. Let it be known, he said, voice loud and sure. She is not my prisoner. She is not just my woman. She is my equal. Gasps spread across the circle. She fought when others froze. She protected the children. She brought light into the dark. He looked at her, eyes fierce. She belongs here not because of what she was, but because of what she's become. And this time, no one argued. The sun rose on a camp that had bled, but not broken. In the days following the raid, wounds were bound, arrows collected, horses retrieved. The tribe moved like a single body, coordinated, quiet, watchful. And in the center of it, Emma worked beside Dakota like she'd always belonged. But that illusion of permanence shattered on the 3rd day. The sound of hooves came. Just after midday, several riders, dressed in blue coats and hats, us army, Emma's heart plummeted as they approached the camp slowly, one rider holding a white cloth high. Dakota stepped forward with his warriors, cautious but not hostile. The soldiers stopped a safe distance away. Their leader, a stocky man with a grizzled beard and sharp eyes, raised a hand in greeting. We're not here to fight, he said. We're looking for a woman, white, about yay tall, brown hair. Escaped from a wagon raid about 3 weeks ago. Emma stepped from behind the line of warriors before Dakota could stop her. The officer's face lit up. Miss Emma Reese? She nodded slowly. We thought you were dead. Your family's been searching. There's reward money posted. You're wanted back east. Dakota's jaw clenched. He didn't look at her. The soldier's eyes narrowed. Are you being held here against your will? Emma glanced at Dakota, then at the children gathering behind the warriors. She saw Nita with her arm still bandaged. She saw the elder woman who had given her herbs for her burned palms. She saw the girl whose hand she'd held when the raiders came, and she saw Dakota, the man who once threatened her life, then slowly gave her his. No, she said. No, I'm not. The officer frowned. Ma'am, you don't have to protect them. We can escort you to Fort Lowell, safe and proper. I said no, she repeated, firmer now. I'm not going with you. He looked stunned. Your people think you're dead. You had a home, a name, a future. I have those things now, she cut in. They just don't look the same as before. A long silence passed. You? Sure? He asked. Emma nodded. I'm sure. The soldier shook his head slowly, muttering something under his breath. Well, it's your life, ma'am. He turned to Dakota, gave a stiff nod, then motioned to his men. Mount up. Let's ride. The horses turned, dust kicked up. And just like that, the past rode away. That night, The fire burned low in Dakota's tent. Emma sat in silence, staring into the flickering flame, her arms wrapped around her knees. Dakota hadn't spoken much since the soldiers left. "Why didn't you try to stop me?" she asked finally. "I couldn't." His voice was quiet. "This land has taken too much from people like you. If you'd chosen to leave, I wouldn't have blamed you." "I thought I might," she admitted. "I thought I'd feel something when I saw them. Relief, hope, maybe even guilt for staying. But—" she looked at him, her eyes clear. "All I felt was distance, like that girl died in the raid. And this woman, this version of me, was born in your camp." Dakota reached across the fire, taking her hand in his. "You chose us. That means more than you know." Emma smiled faintly. "It means everything to me." They sat in silence for a while. The fire crackled low. Then Dakota asked, "Are you ready for what comes next?" She tilted her head. "What do you mean?" He looked her in the eye. "Being. Mine ... means more than sharing a tent. You'll be marked as family. You'll take on the tribe's burdens and its battles. You'll never be seen as an outsider again. But you'll never truly go back either." Emma didn't hesitate. "I don't want to go back," she said. "Not ever." The next morning, the tribe gathered again. This time not for judgment, not for grief, but for acceptance. Dakota stood before the fire, holding a piece of white clay. He painted a single streak across Emma's cheekbone, then one across his own. "Our spirits are joined," he said aloud. "Not by law, not by trade, but by trial and choice." The tribe watched in silence. Nita stepped forward. She held out a leather cord with a carved stone, a symbol worn by the women of the tribe. When they were claimed in union, Emma reached for it, but Nita shook her head. She stepped behind Emma and tied it around her neck herself, and in that moment, Emma knew this wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning. Weeks passed, and the desert changed with the season just as Emma had. She now wore the colors of the tribe, her hair braided and bound with leather strips. She no longer flinched at war cries, nor did she stumble through chores. She knew the ways of grinding corn, how to read the cloud shifts for weather, how to load a bow and keep a fee. Fire alive through the coldest night, but one thing still remained unfinished. Emma hadn't chosen her new name. The tribe never forced one. A name was something earned or received in a moment of clarity. It couldn't be taken lightly. And until she found hers, she was still the white woman who stayed. Dakota gave her space, never pressuring, though his eyes always watched her with silent pride. He knew she was searching for more than a name. She was waiting for a sign, something to separate her from the woman she once was. That sign came one dusky evening. In the shape of a riderless horse. It bolted into the camp blood. On its flank, a snapped arrow stuck in its side. The mare was familiar. Emma's chest tightened. It had belonged to the scout who patrolled the northern ridge. Raiders again. The alarm spread like wildfire. Dakota and his warriors readied themselves within moments. Emma reached for her knife. "And saddlebag. You're staying here," Dakota said sharply. "I'm not hiding in the dark again," she snapped. "Not this time." He hesitated, but one look at her face, at the fire behind her eyes, and he knew better than to stop her. They rode out fast, Emma behind Nita, who now rode like a devil reborn, her wounded arm finally healed. They reached the ridge by twilight. It wasn't a raid, it was an ambush. 5 of Dakota's men had been pinned down in the canyon below, wounded and cut off by rifle fire from high ground. Emma took cover behind a rock, assessing. There's no way up without being seen. Dakota cursed under his breath. Emma studied the cliffside. There's one way, she muttered, eyes narrowing at a jagged ledge snaking up the back. You'll never make it alone, Nita said. I'm small and fast, Emma replied. They won't expect me. I just need to draw their fire long enough for your men to break free. Dakota grabbed her arm. If you go up there, you might not come back. Emma looked him dead in the eye. I died once already, remember? That? Girl in the wagon? She's gone. You helped me bury her. She climbed like a shadow. Rocks slipped beneath her feet, cutting her palms. Her legs burned with every motion, but she didn't stop. At the top, she caught her breath, then crept forward. There 2 men, armed, backs turned. Laughing. Emma moved like a whisper. She threw a rock far to the right, drawing their eyes. Then another, closer. When one turned, confused, she leapt from the ledge and tackled him with a wild yell. The other reached for his rifle, but too late. Dakota's warriors had seen the distraction. Shots rang out from below, pinning the raiders down. By the time the dust settled, the canyon was theirs again. Emma stood above them, bloodied and panting, but alive. That night, around the fire, the people gathered. They had seen her fight before. They had seen her love and lead and serve. But now, they had seen her protect them not out of fear or duty, but choice. The elder stood. She held a painted stone in one hand. Tonight she is no longer the woman who begged for mercy, the elder said. She is no longer the white girl who came to us lost. She turned to Emma. Tonight, you choose who you are. Emma stood. Her voice did not shake. I was Emma Reese, daughter of bankers, promised to a man with a suit and a silver watch. She paused, looking around at the people who had become her kin. Her voice strengthened. But that woman died in the sand. She turned to Dakota. You gave me your knife, your trust, and your fire. I give you my name. She stepped forward and took the stone from the elder. I am fire who rises. The tribe murmured their approval, first soft, then louder. Dakota reached out, pulled her into his arms, and whispered, You are mine. And you are you, finally, far. From the wagons and the white fences, beneath the endless sky, she was reborn. Not owned, not claimed, but chosen by herself.